Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Brought to you by Junk Be Gone and the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Paper Be Gone studios for the Sports Source. We appreciate you being with us. Last week, all was right with the world. This week, burn it all down. Such is life, such is sports. We'll discuss the Volunteers' loss yesterday to Michigan, bounce from the NCAA tournament in the second round. It's also the beginning of spring practice. I can't think of a better time to have something else over here to look at and to think about. So we'll talk basketball and football today. Let's get right into it because there is plenty to cover. First segment of our program brought to you by our friends at Junk Be Gone. Spring is here today. And that means it is spring cleaning time, too. Make it easy on yourself. And trust me, I love easy. So that's why every year I call these guys. They bring one of their driveway dumpsters over to the house. They drop it off. I fill it up. They take it away. It's affordable. It's quick. It's painless. It's easy. And if you want it even more easy, they've got crews that come in and do the work for you. If you got something big you want out of the house, call them. They load it up. They haul it off. Junk Be Gone. JunkBeGone.biz to line them up this week. All right, let's welcome in the first round of panelists we have talking basketball. Former Vol Isaiah Victor right here. Isaiah, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Right here we got Mark Pankratz, former D1 basketball player at Milwaukee and also former assistant coach under Bruce Pearl and Conzo Martin. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
From 99.1 The Sports Animal right there, Jimmy Himes. Jimmy, thank you for being here.
Thank you, John.
Longtime sports writer, longtime media member, longtime panelist on the show. Chuck Cavaleris sits at the end of the table, and I can feel a difference in mood sitting here this morning.
Yeah.
Just looking at these faces,
Yeah.
there is a palpable air of despair, a little bit of it's just an ugly feel.
It's angst.
It's a little angst.
It's
yeah.
angst.
There's a cloud of angst hanging over us. All season we talked about the fact that Tennessee really didn't have a good plan B or a consistent plan C on the days when the three-point shots weren't falling. Well, that happened. That's what you got yesterday. On Friday, or maybe it was Thursday, I think Iowa played the same day you did. Iowa came in probably as hot as Tennessee, 9 out of 10 games they'd won. They won the Big Ten tournament. They had their worst shooting day of the year against Richmond, bounced. And I was talking with some folks, and I'm like, that's this tournament. You can talk matchups all you want, but if you come out and you can't hit, you're dead. That's what happened to Tennessee. Take a look at these numbers. Go cold, go home. UT, the #1 three-point shooting team in the Southeastern Conference this year, wound up 36.5% because they just went on such a hot streak at the end of the year. Against Longwood in round 1, 14 of 24, 58%. Round 2, 2 of 18. 11%. Now, I'll credit Michigan for playing some good defense, but Tennessee had some open looks they couldn't drop either. That 11%, worst three-point shooting day of the season. Gentlemen, you can't do that in March. That's if you want to do that in the regular season, fine. You do it in the NCAA tournament, and you don't have a plan B. You don't have an inside guy. There's just not much you can do in terms of hoping to advance in that situation. Does it start? And it doesn't end there, but is that where you guys start, the three-point cold shooting, or do you start somewhere else?
Yeah, you got to start there just because it was such a big part of our offense. But at the same time, we did get some good points in the paint, and we did get some fast break points, especially in the first half, and I think that helped us out a lot. I don't think that's the end-all, be-all, but it's glaring for sure.
You thought that the Longwood game and all the easy open looks, kind of what Kenny Smith said and warned of that day, you thought that might have hurt him a little bit.
Yeah, and they, just because they're, whatever, 15 seed, 14 seed, whatever they were, that doesn't mean they aren't a good team, but, they wound up being deserving of that seed, and everything was really easy that game. We moved the ball great. We did almost everything we wanted to do. We made a bunch of easy shots. And it felt like one of those early season games that you schedule, just one of the first couple of games of the year, and you get an easy win. And that was kind of inconsistent with the way the season had been going. We've been all SEC opponents lately besides Texas, and SEC tournament, a bunch of rivalry games, and then we had this kind of a lull of a game, and then now we got to go back up against a Big Ten powerhouse. in Michigan. So it probably wasn't a great time for that game, but what can you do?
It's the irony of everybody wants the high seed, but by playing a high seed, you get a bit of a breather, which is supposed to be better for you. But when you step back into big conferences, it gets a little harder.
It could affect us.
Yeah. Mark, your thoughts on yesterday?
Well, everything you mentioned, the three-point shooting, I mean, we talk about points in the paint. We actually had 40 points in the paint to their 32. Fast break points, we had, I think, 15 to their 6. And so ways that you would look at we should win the basketball game. You had some guys step up. Kennedy Chandler, defensively, we were pretty strong. But, yes, we played a lighter opponent, but also Michigan's a really good basketball team, and they have what Tennessee doesn't. They have a presence inside that they could continue to give the ball to in Dickinson, and Tennessee doesn't have a rim protector. They don't have somebody that, if we're not being able to shoot the ball from the perimeter, that not even can get a basket consistently, but they can draw a double team or can put pressure on your defense, can make the right pass, can get to the free throw line. And those were that was outside of the three-point shooting. That interior presence, that lack of scoring, that lack of presence there was a big difference.
Yeah, the points in the paint's a little misleading. They got 23 points out of their 4 big guys. A lot of those points in the paint were layups from Kennedy Chandler and Sky Ziegler, who played. Chandler had one of his best games.
He was terrific.
He really ramped it up the last month of the season and looked like everything people expected him to be from day one. Jimmy, go ahead.
Well, yeah, the main thing to me, obviously, was the lack of three-point shooting. And we had talked a lot this season about how Tennessee didn't have enough consistency in the paint to go to somebody that could get you a basket when you're in a drought. Tennessee had a 5-minute-plus field goal drought down the stretch after they built that 60-54 lead. Then they got outscored 22-8. But if you look at their season, they had 8 losses. 7 of those losses, they had a poor three-point shooting game. The only outlier was Kentucky. The other 7, they shot 25% or less. And the 1 for 11, the 2 for 18, which ends up being 11%, that was their worst of the year. But there was a common denominator with those losses, and it was poor three-point shooting and the inability to overcome that by going to a Grant Williams or somebody inside that could get you a basket. And I just think that caught up with them.
Chuck?
Well, one of the stats I saw when you talk about it, second chance points. It was 13-7 Michigan, and those back-to-back putbacks that looked like a replay almost, that was huge. The sky hook on the baseline. Then Ziegler has the ball still in his hand. The light goes off. Those are the kind of play. I mean, it was just like, boy, that's a lot to overcome. But I tried to watch the game on fast forward. The start of the second half, guys. Tennessee battles back. You're up 5 at halftime. All that momentum's gone because they were Michigan's able to get the ball in the post, establish that, and then Dickinson was just the difference.
Dickinson was fantastic. It was one of those days, the shot you're talking about where the guy takes the runner in the last minute, too. I think that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah, right.
And he just throws it up, and it's nothing but net. It was one of those days where the other guy who was 17, I mean, we could talk about Michigan being a powerhouse program. Okay. It was a 17-14 team this year. They were 3 games over 500, and most ball fans would have told you they don't deserve to be in the tournament when they got their bid. And you can still debate whether they should have gotten in or Texas A&M should have gotten in. I just look at it and think this was you had beaten teams that had size this year. You were 5-1 against teams that had size like Michigan. Defensively, that was the worst team you lost to all year, except for Alabama, who you played without Chandler and Fulkerson, still almost beating the road. I think if you play Michigan 9 times out of 10, you win that game. That's what, to me, is a little disappointing, is because there was a lot of crying all week about we deserve better than the 3 seed.
Exactly.
You wound up playing an 11 seed. If you're a 2 seed, you play a 7 or a 10. You got a break. You played a team in seed-wise, that is lesser than what you would have played if you were a 2 seed. So it's disappointing to me to look at it and see the way it turned out. I also thought there was another part that looked like what we'd seen during the season that we'd talked about so many times here. Tennessee has a 6-point lead. They hold Michigan scoreless for 4 minutes. You're scoreless too.
Right.
I talked to Bob Hodge on the phone. I'm like, this feels like one of those football games where you should be up 3 touchdowns and you're up 7 going into the fourth quarter. It's like we've wasted some possibilities here, some opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, with 8.5 minutes to go, John, you're up 6. Then 3.5 minutes to go, it's tied. They make the 3-point play at the bucket. The other big thing was, who has defended Vescovi like that? Nobody. I mean, you could always count on him being able to do something, and that was by far. I mean, James had 3 points in the second half. Vescovi has 5 total? you're not going to win when two of your main players are held down like that.
Is the Big Ten style just better than the SEC when they match up head to head?
I think they played better half-court basketball. I wanted to see us speed the game up. I'm a presser in my head. I wanted to see us use our guards. I felt like we were faster than them, so I wanted to see us speed it up and see how long Dickinson can run up and down the court without being able to, take that 30-second break.
He had to go take a breather at one point.
Yeah, he did.
I wish he had stayed on that stationary bike.
Okay.
But they control tempo. Michigan, like what you were saying, Chuck, with the second half, they got the ball inside. They demanded the presence. They demanded of how this game was going to be played. And Tennessee wasn't able to do that, initiate, whether it was with pressing or with our freshman guards getting up and dictating the tempo. And that was the difference of the game. Big Ten has that slower tempo style that they were accustomed playing that can oftentimes bode well for tournament-type settings, and that's why the game changed in that sense.
And John, one quick thing. Michigan is now going back to the Sweet 16 for the 5th straight year. The only other longer streak than that is Gonzaga now with 7. So there was something else too there, with something about that program. They have the feeling we're going to get this done.
If I went into that game looking at it, the box that they had that you check is experience. They'd been there at that level before. The other boxes, I mean, you look, Tennessee went toe-to-toe with a lot of really good teams this year that would probably beat Michigan. It just happened to be, I think they played one of their best games. I think you played one of your worst games, and that's a bad time to do that in the tournament. We'll talk more about it. Let me ask you this. Was that a choke? Was that a choke job? We'll discuss that next on the Sports Source. Come back.